Welcome everyone to another level 3 class. Today's class is going to be a bit of a interesting class. I'm going to bring up some topics that I guarantee will be very challenging. And I am just doing this in hopes that we can have a level 3 discussion on some of the issues that we're facing worldwide. And so I'll just begin by, I'm stating that I expect robust adults to be in this room today, meaning uh, I'm going to be challenging you guys to take what we've been learning about boundaries, about self-responsibility, about not self-abandoning, about victim mindset, um, and give some discussion and hopefully have some interaction where we can maybe display the kind of conversations that are needed in the world by being willing to stay in our primal trust and in our curiosity. So, you guys up for it? Okay. We'll see. All right. So, that being said, okay, I'm going to share my slide and then I'll explain a little more about what today's about. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about a few things today. We're going to use the basis of what we have been talking about with our boundaries, our sense of responsibility, and we are going to address the idea behind the root issues in our humanity versus expressed systemic issues. And I wrote that very specifically. I want you to think about maybe what am I talking about? The root issue versus the expressed systemic issues, and how what we're learning helps us to attend to that. I'm going to go in deeper into something that I'm going to call your internal game versus your external game. And we'll take that another level to see how does that apply to validating others' emotions versus validating their beliefs. And of course, the antidote. So we're going to take some concepts that we've been learning for ourselves, for our own body, for our own healing, and see how does what we're actually doing here in Primal Trust apply to what's happening worldwide, what's happening in our families, in our society, and how can we bring our wisdom into those situations. So let's begin by talking about the internal, I'm going to call it the inside versus the outside game. What do I mean by that? Well, we have been talking a lot about attending to your mind theories. For those of you who are watching this level 3 class, if you haven't watched my November 7th class on boundaries and victim mindset, I highly recommend you watch that before continuing. I mean, you can stay here if you haven't, but please go rewatch it because a lot of this won't make sense, as well as watching the Q&A on November 14th that I did, and that would be in the core popular classes video library. So in level 3, we have been talking about the internal game the last few sessions. I've been talking to you about not self-abandoning. I've been talking to you about finding boundary. I've been talking to you about taking responsibility. And that is the internal game that all of us are playing. And that is you attending to your mind theories, is what I called it in the boundaries class. And we often call it brules. So the stories in our head, that's our internal game. And separating ourselves from the stories and learning how to attend to our emotions, attend to the felt sense, attend to the feelings. We do this with every brain retraining practice. Cancel, let go of the story, be here now with the feeling. Ultimately, this is you taking responsibility for your suffering by attending to what's there. That is the internal game. And I want to point out to you that there's also an external game or an outside game that we're all playing. And that might mean the external game is your relationship with others. So the boundaries that you might have, um, how you show up for others, how you hold space for others, how you engage in the world, the actions you take, your purpose. All of that is an external game. Okay. So we've got this internal and the external game. And I'm just kind of leading a setup here so that we can get into some of the more juicy discussions. So as long as you're kind of getting clear that your internal game is what's in your responsibility, that's what's within your control. That's you attending to your feelings and attending to the hurt, attending to figuring out what your truth is, what your boundaries are. That's your internal game. That's what you are responsible for. Okay, so one of the things I want to say about this, well, let me move on and maybe we'll say it here. So, a question: how do we separate our mind theories or our rules, like we talk about in level 2, from our emotional experience so that we can heal the root cause? We've been talking about that. I gave some pointers in the boundaries and victim mindset class. We've been talking about that all through level 2 and level 3, which is really learning how to somatically presence what you're feeling, how to be present with yourself, how to be present with what's coming up in you, the hurt, how to not make someone else responsible for your feelings, because ultimately they're triggering things that already existed inside of you. You wouldn't be triggered if there wasn't a trigger button in the first place. Okay. So that's the first question that we've already been working on. But let's take this a step further, because this is going to be really important for the discussion today. How do we validate? How do we validate someone else's emotional experience without validating their beliefs that we disagree with, maybe, so that we can come back into connection even when we disagree? Now, this might not be something you do with every person right now. Okay. I'm saying just don't think of the most extreme case. Okay. That's where the mind always wants to go. The person who really, 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 really hurt you. Let's not do that right now. Let's use this as a experiment with something a little bit more benign. How do we validate someone else's emotional experience without validating their beliefs? I'm not asking you to validate their beliefs. That would be you validating someone else's mind theory when I'm telling you not to validate yours, right? So, one of the things I want to challenge each of you with is to learn how to be curious about the stories and the experiences of others as they're sharing that have maybe shaped their beliefs. This is the idea of listening versus judging. And what would happen if you allowed yourself to listen to someone's life experience that caused them to have the beliefs that they have, that maybe you completely disagree with the belief, but you're curious as to how they got there? That would be a way of staying in connection. And even more, how can you stay curious about their emotional experience where they might make sense actually in some way, that that's their emotional experience based on their history, while at the same time, it doesn't mean that you agree with their mind theory or their belief, but you don't need to prove them wrong. So the second point here that's really important: it's not your job to prove their mind theory wrong. That's an inside job. Come back to number one here. It's our job to attend to our stories, our beliefs, our mind theory, and to learn how to separate that so we can attend to ourselves. It's also the other person's job to attend to their belief system or their mind theory. It's not yours. So these are things that I want to set us up with before I move on. Do we have any questions about that or any comments? Okay. All right. So I want to try to look at the world situation a little differently, but through the lens of primal trust. So now that we have this piece established. Okay, you might remember this slide from Module 7. It's familiar, isn't it? We realized that we came into this whole healing thing often being diagnosed with some type of symptom. And when we got that diagnosis, we're like, oh my gosh, this is the root cause. It's this, whatever the diagnosis was, Lyme, mold, POTS, chronic fatigue. How many of you at one point in your journey, that was the level of consciousness that you had at the time that I finally found the root cause and it's this diagnosis? Yeah, see some hands raised. This is really important. Trust me, I'm going to make a parallel here. At one point, most of us got a diagnosis or something, and we're like, that's it. That's the root cause. And we maybe told everybody about it. Maybe we wrote blogs about it. Every conversation we had, we learned, we were telling people, evangelizing our root cause, which is whatever that diagnosis was. Was it the root cause? Or or was that just a step in your journey of discovering the root cause? Okay. So then it gets a little further. We're like, oh, maybe it's some nutritional issue or a cellular problem. Maybe it's the limbic system. Maybe it's the autonomic nervous system. Oh no, actually it's trauma. And then we get into level 2 and 3, and we're talking about this separation from self as the root cause. And now here you guys are many, many, many months later in your journey. And at one point, I want you to remember what you felt like was the systemic root cause of how you didn't feel well and where you're at now. Has that changed? Has that changed? What if as a society, we are on that same journey where everybody is pointing to a certain root cause that's actually at the top of the tree and screaming and shouting and making all awareness and every campaign to make awareness about a root cause that might actually be at the top of the tree. And we're going to explore this together. Because what happens collectively is we will feed each other our mind theories and we'll prove even more truth to that original root cause. How many of you got into support groups for Lyme or mold or whatever, and that collective mindset reinforced the root cause being that pathogen, that toxin, that MTHFR thing, that whatever. I mean, I've been through all of it. It's the SIBO, it's the genetics, it's the Lyme, it's this. And then we're stuck in group think. And I talked about this in the boundaries class. Group think is where there's a collective consciousness that's pointing at a problem, and you get so myopic about that problem that you don't realize you're at the top of the tree. And you're only looking for solutions through that mindset. What is the antibiotic for Lyme? What is the detox thing for mold? What is the methylation thing for here? We're only able to see this because our systemic viewpoint is at a root cause that isn't the root cause. But we don't know that because we're being reinforced by collective mind think, by collective mind stories, by collective awareness at that time. I've really been sitting with this the last several weeks. How can I bring this topic into Primal Trust? Because all of you are asking, but in a way that's aligned for me. And it's not about what political side I'm on. That is not the answer. So let's explore what an answer might be. We're also going to talk about an antidote, and I'll get to that in a moment. But first, I'm going to share something else. I want us to use our collective consciousness, which We have all sorts of political views in here. All perspectives are here, and they're all welcome. And I want us to explore what might be at the top of the tree that we're all pointing to as a root cause. And then I want to explore what might be actual a root cause underneath these issues and hear from each other. And now this is where I'm asking you to all put your big girl and big boy pants on and hold space for the other side that has a root cause that you disagree with. But we're going to hear about it. And if you cannot be respectful, I will ask you to leave the class. So I want to get into a discussion so that we can see what commonalities exist in the systemic issues that we are fighting about. I want you to see, just like all of us here have a different diagnosis in a different body, but we have a commonality, don't we? Nervous system dysregulation and trauma and things like that. We have come together from multiple different root causes, supposed root causes at the top of the tree, and we're here for a common purpose. And when we do that, we find solutions that work on a deep level. This is what has to happen for us to find systemic solutions, just like the systemic solution to the body. We actually have to go deeper than what groupthink is saying. Okay, so I am going to use my iPad to make a little drawing with all of you. Hopefully, let's see if it'll work. Let's see. Hold on just a second. Okay. Let me see. Hold on. Haven't done this before, so make sure I can. Oops. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay. So we're going to make our own little tree together. And I am going to ask us to collectively, hold on, I got to get my chat box to open. Share, and I'm going to give some of my own feedback as well. I'm going to ask you guys to put in the chat box what some of the systemic expression upper issues are that we think are root issues. And then we're going to explore what might be the root issues underneath of it, which is actually where the internal game that we just talked about is going to come into play. So who is willing to share what they believe is a systemic issue? Colonialism. Okay. I'm writing it all down. All thoughts are included here. Okay. What else? Come on, you guys. Addiction. Yes. What else? Darkness. Racism. Good. Patriarchy. Okay. I might not get all of them. Okay. Workaholism. Yep. Capitalism. Being disconnected. I'm going to put that one down here in a minute. So I'm going to get back to that one. Poverty. So systemic expression. So the top of the thing, inequality, ignorance. Well, I'm going to actually, that one might be a lower one. Keep going. Separation from nature. That's going to be one that I'm going to put below. Dependency. Systemic issues that people are screaming and shouting about. What are they? Misogyny. Yep. All the words that we know. Let's just put them out there. They're all welcome here. Transphobia. Economic issues. Immigrants. Repression. I'm going to actually keep that for below. Censorship. Yes. Corruption. I'm going to do mandated vaccines. What else? Yeah, untested. War. Nutrition. Algorithms. Yes. Government control. Billionaires. Let's put it on there. Media corruption. Yes. Limited access to resources. How about abortion? It's a big one. All these words that I never thought I would say in a primal trust class. Here we go. Healthcare discrepancies. Yep, 24/7 productivity. I did workaholism. All right. Climate change. Yeah, there's one. Let me see here if I have any other ones that I wanted to say. Addiction. I think you guys got all the ones I was thinking of. Ableism. I think that might be a little bit of a root. Extractive communities. Okay. So, first of all, how does it feel just to like speak out? All of you get to share things that you're upset about that are up here. And we all, first of all, have different life experiences that make these various systemic expression issues seem very, 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 very real and very much the problem. It seems like if you turn on the news or turn on any podcast or anything, these are the words everyone is talking about right now. And they're arguing about who is right, who is wrong, what belief system is valid, what one isn't. Oh, yeah, geoengineering, good one. Um, this is what's happening. This is the same thing as the journey you went on with the diagnoses. It really is. And then what happens, you guys, is we latch onto something. Oh, this is the root cause. I'm not going to pick one or the other, but one of these is really, really, really the root cause, and we're going to fight for it. And we're going to just tell everybody about it. And what happens, you guys, is that will end up causing a groupthink where the solutions are only through the lens of the word, the diagnosis, if you will, the systemic diagnosis at the top of the tree. All of these things you could say are a systemic diagnosis, right? Now, what about the root? This is where I need you to use your primal trust thinking cap, all the things you've learned. And I want to see if we can come up with the root. Root. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to give one example with one of these words of what I think is a root issue, and that will give you a little hint because the root issues are going to be similar. Let's talk about racism. Racism, I think, and this is just my thinker, you guys can disagree, is a root issue of belief in separation and a lack of oneness, a belief that you are different from me. That is a core conflict from the beginning of time. So I would say, and I'm not going to draw a line to all of them, but that would be one where I would say separation and a lack of oneness as a root issue. Okay, let's take any of these other ones. Let's see, root issues. So pride. I might be not keeping up. Fear. I saw fear. What else? Now we're going to brainstorm. Look at these words and find your gut instinct of what the root issue is. Judgment, guilt, individualism. I'm going to actually call that narcissism and a type of extreme. Control. Yep, control. But actually, I'm going to say control is only there because of the feeling of powerlessness. So let's take it one step below control. Why do we need control? Go deeper, because we feel powerless. Because we feel powerless. I'm going to say shame. Yep. So deep feelings, shame and grief. How about unmet needs and trauma causing crime and other addiction? Unmet needs, that was one that I came up with. Unmet needs. Um, what else? Survival. What makes survival? It's fear, lack of trust in life. And why do we have that lack of trust? Because we're disconnected from source and not able to. So again, it's disconnect. I just had another one. What was it? Oh, separation from nature, I think is a big one. We have gotten out of touch with nature's way, and this is a big reason I think we're sick. Scarcity, lack of love, and again, try to go deeper. Why are we in scarcity? Why are we in scarcity? A lot of times I think worthiness, certain people are more worthy than others, separation from self. I think there's so much here with separation that is, what leads to these things. We don't get our needs met. We feel disconnected. We're separate from nature. We're separate from each other. We judge each other. So, yeah, separation. And a lot of times worthiness because of that. So, can you see that we might disagree about what the problems are in the leaves of the tree? But I think that we can all agree that we're experiencing these root issues, right? What if our conversations right now would go from talking about these triggering words to exploring someone's stories that makes them so passionate about these words that might be a story where they're actually down there, where we're actually hearing about this story from the root, and then we actually relate to it. Oh my gosh, I actually feel that same way, but I'm really passionate about nature or medicine. I see you're really passionate about equality and patriarchy or whatever. How do we get back to talking to each other from this viewpoint? You see, the systems want us using these words that are divisive. Are you in my camp or are you not? And we're programmed to have that myopic groupthink where we don't realize it's hard to have a solution come that's mutual with all groups when we're not actually coming at it through the root cause. Same thing with our body. Can you imagine if we were still stuck at the top of the tree, just talking about those diagnoses and only going to looking up online and talking to others and talking to practitioners only about the diagnosis at the top of the tree, and you never, ever, ever talked to anyone or sought out information looking for the root cause? You'd be stuck. You'd be stuck in an endless loophole. And I was stuck up there for years. We're stuck up here, you guys, because we're being programmed to hate each other for thinking differently. Because the root issue is separation of some sort, and our fear that if we don't feel the same way as another person, we don't belong, and the survival instinct of our protector to cast people away who won't agree with you because it doesn't feel safe. So, and I don't know the answer to this. I'm just bringing this forward. As I was preparing for this class, the tree diagram from module 7 came to my head. It was like a whole epiphany. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing. I really want Primal Trust and the people here to be able to communicate with each other on the level of the root and to hold space for those who are on a seemingly opposite perspective and spectrum, and realize that maybe they have a story that has caused them to become very passionate about one of these words, and you have no idea what their story is because you're not even listening. You're just wanting to prove their mind theory false. And I'm right there along with all of you. I've done this myself. I've done this myself. So what do we do? um, well, in Primal Trust, by the end of module 7, I ask you, or by the end of, not module 7, class 7 of level 2, what's the whole point of that journey? It's to get to the root issue and to find what? Your antidote. We're looking for an antidote. So I want to think about antidotes for each of you here. For the things that you care about up here, you have learned how to take a journey from chronic fatigue, chronic pain, mold toxicity, multiple chemical sensitivity, on a whole journey down the tree, down into your boulders and your triggers, and eventually come up with an antidote that nourishes the roots of your tree to try to heal the whole system, right? That's what we're trying to do. So I just want you guys to think about what antidotes could be there for you versus a victim of any of these words up here. How can you live a life of your antidote, just like we do for our body? How can you live a life to address whatever it is that you're passionate about and encourage each other to live each other's antidote, even if it's an antidote for a word that you disagree with? Because you know that that antidote is a frequency that is aligned into the root cause of all of it. So, what could some of the antidotes be? It could be any ideas. What are some antidotes? Not shrinking and loving is more important than surviving. Great. We're all equally important and of value. Great. What are some antidotes? Write them out. We are one. Curiosity and openness. I'm deeply loved and supported. I trust myself. And my son, I am safe. Sorry, some of these are going too fast. Compassion for self and others. Everything is connected. We are all brothers and sisters. We're all here for a reason. We have a purpose in our life. Maybe the antidote, for you individually, like let's say you care about climate. Well, then your antidote is truly trying to connect with nature and learn from her and revolve your family's life around her and teach, people who are interested how you are helping nature. Maybe your antidote is really trying to come into more connection with those who you feel think differently from you, because it solves the root issue of racism, which is separation and other. And you're actually actively working on that yourself. Maybe it's um, learning how to trust more in the flow of life itself rather than needing government control to make you feel safe. Um, there's so many beautiful statements here in the chat box. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. There's a benevolent universe, love instead of fear. We are all worthy and equal. God loves all of his children everywhere. So I'm going to stop share and just talk. I want you all to just maybe try to scan back and remember the tree when you're having these triggering conversations. Holiday season's coming, family's coming up. How can you do this? How can you try to keep this mindset? Like they are not maybe going to have this consciousness that you are, that there's a root, but that's not their job. Your internal game is your internal game. Their internal game is where they're at. Just like many of your friends are at the top of the tree looking for the diagnosis and getting their diagnosis of this mineral imbalance or this MTHFR, and you're just watching them knowing they've got a long journey to go on, one that you've went on. How can you be compassionate enough for somebody who is wrapped up in the diagnosis at the top of the tree in their groupthink? They're trying to solve the root issue, but the system is not illuminating them as to how to do it. because we're meant to stay in separation, you guys. We're not meant to. The systems that be want us separate. They don't want us talking about root issues. They don't want us having collaborative conversation. They don't want us attending to our internal game of our own mind theory, attending to our own hurt, and allowing someone else to do the same. So, this is where I want you guys to be thinking about your internal game versus your external game. And I want to say a couple of things. When you attend to your hurt and your mind stories of what they said and what they did, that doesn't always mean that the external game, the boundary that you have, that the boundary just goes away. Not at all. You may go through a process of being able to resolve hurt, but the other person may not be at a place where no boundaries are appropriate. The external game can look a little different than the internal game. For me, I had a situation with my grandmother. She literally wouldn't talk to me until the day she died. I mean, no, she didn't even talk to me the day she died. I had to go through a lot of repair with her. I brought up the family secrets and, shame on me for doing that. She literally could not talk to me until the day she never did. I had to work so hard on that internal game of understanding her and her conscious development and her ego development that she could not face shame. And for her, she had to put the canceling cast out boundary. I wish so much that she had the tools I did to think and feel differently and meet her hurt, but she didn't. I had to accept that her internal game was at a different level than mine. And so therefore her ability to be in connection with me wasn't there ever. And it's very sad, but it is the case. Doesn't mean that my internal game is I'm mad at grandma. I actually have so much understanding and compassion for that woman who never got to go through Primal Trust or have these communities. She never knew how to attend to her shame. And therefore the external game looked very fragmented with her. And I had to respect that. So you guys are going to have a different external game than an internal game. You're going to have people in your life that literally are at the top of the tree screaming and shouting those words because the group think programs them to say the same words over and over and over that are just divisive versus let's explore the root. And you're going to have to hold space for that and understand my only job is to attend to my root thing around this issue. My job is to maybe listen to this person. And maybe if you were to listen and ask them their story, they might start to crawl down the trunk of the tree and get to their root because they've been listened to. They've been heard. Their story starts to make sense. Like, oh, I'm so passionate about this because I actually feel this way about my human experience, that I don't belong, that I'm worthless, that I'm less than. And so really want to fight for equality because I have this unmet need inside of me that was never met by my parents. I didn't see it so clearly before. What would that be like? This is what I wish for all of us and for you all, for your families and your communities and what you're passionate about.